Good morning. You're watching Much Ado About Something, and I'm Donna. Well, it's another cloudy, rainy day outside, so we're not going to be able to go outside and garden today. It's too wet for that. So we're inside doing the inside things that we do when we can't get outside. Well, if you know a harvester, if you know someone that is into herbal remedies and makes tinctures and oil infusions and uses herbs in their cooking, then you probably know what it's like around the house when they have all the herbs drying out. I'm going to share with you the herbs that I have drying out today. I have some mint and lemon balm that I'm going to make tea out of, and it's dry. And I've dried some lemons. Of course, you saw the video where we harvested mullein. If you didn't, that's feel free to look into my videos and choose to watch that one, how to harvest mullein and what to do with it when you have it. I have this tray of mullein here that's ready. I have rose petals that I've got off. There's rose, peony, and honeysuckle. So I have a lot of dried herbs. Over here on the rail that we put up here over the foyer, I've got the mullein, and it's dry. We just bundled it up like you would tobacco and hung it up here. And this is some sage that I've got hanging, and then more mullein up here. So it's dry and it's ready to be chopped. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm in here making sure that I'm cutting up and making the use out of all these herbs that I've harvested. A lot of people use a dehydrator, and I have a dehydrator. Sometimes I use it, but a lot of the times I just lay them out the old-fashioned way. I just lay them out on a rack or hang them up where they get good ventilation and circulation, and I just harvest them that way. Now, some of these lemons that were cut thicker, are still wet. They're not completely dry. So I'm going to leave them on this rack and let them dry for a few more days. And these thinner ones that I had cut, they're good and dry. Now, I just put mine in a big bowl. There are special scissors for this, and you can see they have several little blades there. There's 3 blades, and then when you cut your herbs, what that does is cut them up finer. But you don't have to use special scissors. You can just use regular scissors. Now, I'll be using the stem and all in my mint that I've harvested here. A lot of people just want to use blooms or just leaves or just the roots. But I find that there's a lot of beneficial oils and things in the stems. Now, I don't like big tough stems, but for something like tea, you know, you're going to steep that in boiling water, and it'll soften up that stem, and you're not going to eat that stem. You're not going to consume it. So it's perfectly okay to cut up some of the stem and have that in your tea. And I just cut the herb up into a bowl. You know, you want to cut these up small enough so that they'll go in an infuser when you're making your tea. Plus, you'll probably get the most benefit out of it if it's has several cuts in it so that you can infuse all the parts out of it. And then when I have it cut up so, I just take the scissors and go over the top of it and give it a little final chop. I especially have to use the scissors since I'm using some of the stems, a few stems. But if you just had leaves, there's a lot of people that just take the dried leaves and they just crumple them up with their hands and they don't use any tool. And that'll give you a fine textured tea. And don't forget while you're doing this to enjoy the smell, to enjoy the aroma of the herbs, the dried herbs. It smells so good. Now, mint was not my favorite herb for a long time. I don't like an overwhelming amount of mint. I just like a tiny bit. It's a very strong herb, and it can overpower the taste, smell of other herbs that you mix it with. So I'm careful that if I use mint, I just use a very small amount of it in my teas. Now, there's some people that love mint. They could have mint in everything they use, but I'm not a mint lover. I just enjoy it on a small scale and a little bit at a time. Well, now that we have this mint cut up, it's time to think about what we're going to store it in. Glass jars are an excellent choice for storing your herbs. Here's your classic ball jar with a airtight lid that you can buy at most any store, Walmart, Target, places like that. Target may have a different brand. And then these little containers here are airtight, and they're fast becoming good containers. And these are containers that I've saved, of course, and rewashed, and they're also excellent to use. The thing about these containers here is they take up a lot of room. Because I harvest so much, I'm limited to the space that I have to store these herbs and things that I harvest every year. So I put mine in a freezer bag, and I'm sure to label what I have. And I even try to put the year that I harvested, and by putting the date on there, it just helps me to remember. Now, a lot of people don't want to use plastic in any shape or form. This shouldn't leach out anything into your herbs since it's not being heated and it's a dry form. There's a place in our society for plastic. There's a lot of plastic, and people use a lot of plastic. For me, in a lot of these cases, this is the best way for me to store my herbs. It'll keep them fairly fresh in this plastic. I can press out the excess air and store it flat. I have a flat, space-saving way to store these herbs. And I don't worry too much about the leaching in of any kind of plastic since it's not heated, it's not wet, and it's not going to be on my shelf for very long. And we would do the same thing, the exact same thing with our mullein. This is mullein. I am going to take a minute and wipe out this bowl since I don't want any mint residue in this bowl. Now Donald and I harvested more mullein this year because we plan on making mullein tea. Mullein is such a good lung herb, and it's also good for other things. I refer back to these two books right here, or maybe these three. This one's got herbal recipes. Rosemary Gladstar's Herbal Recipes. This is a book I really like to refer back to. Backyard medicine. And then medicinal herbs from Rosemary Gladstar's garden. And she shares these with you. And this is a good little book. Amy Fuel also has an herbal book. And it's a pretty good book. It didn't have an ear drop remedy in that book, I don't think. I like to use mullein as ear drops. And this is the eardrop recipe that I use from Rosemary Gladstar's, but with just a few exceptions. She uses the flower, and I have harvested the flower, but I don't harvest the flower as often as I do the leaf. So I've just, in the practice of using what I have on hand, I just go ahead and use leaves most of the time. The leaves of the mullein. I don't wait for the flower. The flower is beautiful, and it's mild and delicate, and it is a wonderful part of the herb, but it's not the part of the herb that I use the most. When I started harvesting mullein, I would dig up the whole plant, including the root, the stalk, and the blooms. But in just what I use it for, I have found that I harvest just the rosettes now. I try to get second year rosettes. First years I try to leave and let them grow, and they're usually smaller anyway. And I leave plenty so that they can flower and reseed wherever we harvest from. Donald and I make sure we just take a few and take what we're going to use. We don't strip the area of the herb and then leave and not leaving any to reproduce. That wouldn't be a smart thing to do, because we'd go back next year, there wouldn't be anything. So I'm just cutting up this dried mullein, and you can hear it crunching. You know it's dry. So you just do the same thing with the mullein that you did with the mint. You just cut it up in a large bowl or a large container into smaller pieces so that you'll have it for your teas and your herbal infusions and your tinctures, so that you can use your herb that you've harvested. You know, I'm not a doctor. I'm just an ordinary person. I was raised using some herbal remedies, so I have that background that I use for myself, and I'm just sharing with you simple ways that I've learned from doing research from experts. And of course, it's always better for you to do your own research and find out for yourself what works for you. To consider your own health special needs that you have and what would be best for you. I think the main way that Donald and I use this mullein is simply in tea. We do, however, make oil infusions to make salve and to make ear drops. And I'm going to share with you the eardrop recipe today, if that's something that you'd be interested in. I had an occasion to use the eardrops. You know, this time of the year with pollen and irritation and all of that stuff going on, sinus drainage and sore throats and all that comes with this season of being out in the garden and being outside a lot. There's a lot of irritation. And mullein has a good, consistency about it. It has a good, it's almost like a mucousy coating whenever you make tea out of it or whenever you make an oil infusion. And it really aids aids irritation, and it's astringent. There's a lot of good properties about it. I could go on and on about them, but if you research that herb yourself, you'll be able to read all of the properties and see how it might be used for what you need it in. But that's what we would do. We'd cut this mullein up and cut it up into small pieces to make tea. Now here on May 1st, after I harvested the mullein, I made this oil infusion. I put the dried mullein in here that I had from the year before, and I covered it. In this case, I used fractionated coconut oil, but you could use olive oil, avocado oil, whatever oil that you use that benefits your skin and that you've researched that you like the most. I use fractionated coconut oil a lot. I like its shelf stability. I like the fact that it doesn't go rancid for a long time. Now, in making these ear drops, I've got this bottle here. It's a dropper bottle, and it's glass and it's amber, and I saved the dropper. And what I'm going to do is let me make sure you're good and in focus. Is since this mullein has infused in this oil for quite a few weeks here, you want it to infuse for at least 2 weeks. I'm going to go ahead and strain this out. I've got a tiny little funnel I'm going to use with this little bottle. Now you can save your bottles from year to year. You can save your bottles from anything, whatever might come in a bottle with a dropper. You know, some cosmetics come in nice dropper bottles. You can clean those really well with soap and water, and then disinfect them with alcohol before you fill your bottles up. I would disinfect them. You want to make sure all this is clean. Now I've got this little strainer here, and I've just got a piece of muslin. And I'm going to strain out I hope you can see. I'm going to strain out this herbal infusion into this little bottle using this little funnel. Now you want to check your herb infusion when you open it up and make sure everything looks good. Make sure there's no mold or anything that shouldn't be in there. Of course, it shouldn't be if you check it regularly and shake it often. Now I'm going to have to look at this little bottle and make sure I get this in here right. This strainer and this muslin will strain out any particles that's not needed in your bottle. And then that's what I use for the ear drops. Now when you're filling your bottle, you want to be sure that you leave enough little head space in here to put your dropper in, because it will take up some of your space in your bottle. Clean your bottle really well. Now, how I use these ear drops, I had an occasion to use these ear drops, Mullein Ear Drops, a couple of nights ago. I've had like a slight sinus irritation, and drainage and stuff has been going down my throat, so this ear got a little achy. Now, this is not for swimmer's ear. It's not for any kind of water-related ear ache or ear problem. This would make it worse, so you don't want to use it for swimmer's ear or for anything like that that's caused by water irritation to your ears. This is, I use this like a soothing drop. You know, it's like a cough drop. If you had a sore throat, you would take a cough drop. Well, I noticed that this ear was just aching a little, you know, with the sinus problems and stuff that was going on. So this is how I use the Mullein drops when I need them. This is how I used them for my kids, and this is what we do. This is very warm water in here, and I'm just going to set this. It's going to overflow a little bit. I'm going to set this bottle down in here, in this water, and I'm going to let that warm up. Get some of this stuff out of the way. I'm going to let that warm up for a few minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting up my herbs. Okay, now that our mullein drops are good and warm, I'm going to share with you how I would use these ear drops. Now, they're not hot. They've just been warmed up in this water. You don't want to put anything hot in your ear. So this is just good and warm. And what you want to do is, like in this case, this is the ear that I need some relief in. So I'm gonna lay down on this side and put a few drops of this Mullein oil infusion into my ear, the one that's bothering me. I usually make sure that I don't let the dropper touch my ear so that it stays clean. And of course you can have somebody to help you do this if you need to. Now I just try to lay on the side and let this oil get down into my ear canal. That's what I usually do. And I just massage around my ear a little bit, and that helps the oil work down the ear canal. Now I would stay on this. I would stay laying down maybe on a pillow, or maybe even do this at nighttime, so that the oil would, you'd get the most benefits out of the oil. But of course we live a busy life, and so I have a little piece of cotton here. So you just want to tug that cotton on the outside of your ear. You don't want to stick that cotton in your ear. You just want to put it on the outside to keep that oil from running out all over the place. Now you usually, I tell you, in about a minute, I start feeling the soothing relief of that mullein oil in my ear. It's actually a good pain reliever. It's not for swimmer's ear. It's not for any kind of water in the ear. Oil and water do not mix. And so if you have water that's got caught in your eardrum and causing trouble, you don't want to use oil. That would be a different tincture for that. That would be a different remedy. That would be 50% alcohol and 50% vinegar. Half and half alcohol and vinegar. And then you could use a mullein tincture. And your alcohol could be, a mullein tincture. And you could use that for a swimmer's ear, but not not oil. Oil is for a more soothing, like the sinus condition that I have and the sore throat. It's for a different kind of irritation. But if you need to, you know, consider speaking to your doctor about it before you try anything like this. If you're not familiar with the properties of it and you don't have an understanding of how to use these, contact, research, you know, your own doctor, books, internet, whatever you need to research, people that use it. Health food stores sometimes really help you. This recipe is common. I think it's even sold in health food stores. So just do your research to see what works for you and your specific conditions. This is just this is the ear drops that I use to soothe. And today I'm telling you, I can already feel the effects of those soothing eardrops on my ear. And two, you want to make sure that you always label everything that you make. You might think that you'll remember what you have in that little bottle, but when you get a bunch of them, they start all looking the same. And you can tell by smell, but you want to be careful. You want to make sure that you label everything that you use, everything that you make. That way you'll know you're using the right thing and that you'll have the right properties for the need that you have. Well, I hope this gave you some ideas today to do on a rainy day to get your herbs prepared and stored. I enjoyed sharing it with you. I need to do a whole separate video on storage and about the uses of plastic. I stored the roses in this container right here, the dried roses, because it's airtight and I can see what's in here. And I had quite a few dried roses. And so that's where my dried roses will go. Thank you for joining me today. And like always, until next time. Do you like to help Grammy harvest her herbs? You like to help Grammy cut up her herbs?
Yeah.
What are we cutting up?
Some of this.
Is that mullein or mullein?
Mine.
Yeah. What does Grammy do with that?
Cut it.
Does Grammy put hot water on it and make tea?
Uh-huh.
Thank you for helping me.